let's talk about Potter, VJ. Um, I've been listening to Potter all week, in and out of radio and whatnot, and I've been listening to ex-Chelsea players and a lot of Talk Sport and a couple of other channels. And the consensus is that he doesn't know his first 11, and he doesn't have maybe the respect of the dressing room because he doesn't have the CV and he doesn't have the titles and the glory behind him, and he's just not a right fit for the club. And then I've heard the odd Chelsea fan say, "Hold up, hold up, hold up. Feel a bit sorry for this guy. He's been given all these new ideas and all this new kind of, some superstars, some real expensive players. Like he needs a season and he needs a preseason to really, really understand what these players can do together. Because a preseason is really the couple of months where you actually get to do and implement your ideas. So are we and looking at both sides of the coin, apart from just your own personal view, is there a bit of impatience here and like embarrassment looking at the table and thinking they're all running away with it? We're going to miss out on the Champions League. When actually, if you take all of that noise away, Potter does need time. Or are you on the other side where he's had his time, he's had enough time, and it's time to go?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Tommy Fury has won by split decision, so that's done.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, right, Josh. The supporters are split into two camps, as you just said there, right? And I think when you're watching the games, and we come away and we lose, the emotion is high, and you're like, Potter out, get out, it's done. And then when you cool down and you sit and reflect a little bit, and you think, yeah, exactly like you're thinking right now. Well, hang on a minute. This guy's come in, he's been chucked a load of players, big egos. They all want to play. It must be tough for him. He's still trying to find his feet. But I think if you look at it in a pragmatic way, if this was the start of the season and he had just been brought in, we'd be at the bottom of the table right now, right? With one win in 10 or 11, whatever it is right now. I'm not even counting because it's become depressing. So
14.
at what? Yeah, right, exactly. So at what point do you turn around and say, okay, we need to make a change? Because yes, you're right. He needs time. He needs to find his best 11. He needs to find the right squad, and then he can build. Will he become success at Chelsea? I think he will if they give him enough time. But what you can't do is say, well, here's all the time in the world. Here's all the money, that we put into the squad. Now go and do it. Because you need to win games. The league doesn't stand still. Every week, there's 3 points up for grabs. Either you take those 3 points, or you take 1 point, or you get no points. You can't stand still for 38 games. Everybody else is moving around you. So that's the problem that he's got, is that although he's losing games, if he was losing the odd one here and there, but he was winning, drawing a lot more, then you could see, and fans would turn around and say, well, okay, he's clearly on a path to building something great. And yes, we're going to finish 6th or 7th, but we can see where we're going. At the moment, we're losing all the games. I mean, today's game. I mean, yes, first 20 minutes we were pretty good actually. We were quite good, but I don't know if some of that was down to Tottenham saying, well, okay, well, you come at us, let's see what you got, and then we'll come back at you, right? And then they thought, hang on a minute, we know that's all they've got. So, and then they done us on the counter a couple of times and scored two easy goals in the end. I mean, that one from Skip, which literally at the restart, there's a ball that's cleared. Kepa should have been collecting that ball. Fernandes whacks it straight out to Skip, bang off the bar. A bit of Jorginho-esque that was from the week before, where it come off the bar.
It reminds me of the Eriksen. Do you remember the Eriksen one at the Bridge when Eriksen scored?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a similar kind of goal, but we lost that game.
The title,
yeah, we lost that game. Yeah, again. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. And then the second one, Kane's always fox in the box. He's always there. He's always putting them away, and everyone's just looking around like, what's
Do
going
you
on?
know with Harry Kane, right? If you look at Harry Kane, obviously as a Spurs fan, I look at everything Harry Kane pretty much does. He always hangs at the back post, and what he does, he starts in the middle and then he curves round and he waits for the flick on. They probably do it every day in training. That was straight out the Spurs classic Harry Kane book.
Yeah.
One of the bigger lads, and Eric Dyer's second tallest, I think, in the team, or tallest, I think he is actually now after the goalkeeper. So his tallest outfield player. He's headed it on, and Harry Kane's done the lurking thing, and he's finished. And literally, I can't believe that some teams do their homework on him, but that is what Harry Kane does every corner, man. You'll see him do that every corner. Does it for England as well. He doesn't get involved in the middle anymore because that's where all the argy-bargy is. But yeah, that was just a classic. If you'd done your homework on Kane, you would have stopped that. Someone at Chelsea missed the trick there with that one.
Well, and that's what I mean. So, there was a lot of talk about, well, injuries. Most of the players are back from injury, but there's nothing cooking, right? You're in the kitchen. What's cooking? Nothing is cooking, and we can't see what's going on. And okay, he made a joke the other day, in a crisis meeting, and then he says, "I'm still here." You kind of almost wonder a little bit if they're sort of saying to him, "Don't worry about it. We're not getting relegated this season. Do what you have to do, but next season's where you've got to smash it." Yeah, and he might have a preseason, and he came out, and it was quite sort of. I don't know if he meant it that way. I mean, the guy's been getting death threats, so he's got to deflect something. And he turned around and said, "Oh well, the preseason that the players had with Tuchel was terrible." Like, he didn't mention Tuchel's name, by the way, but he was obviously implying that because Tuchel was there at the time. It was the worst that he'd ever had. And okay, the play wasn't great when Tuchel was there as in earlier on this season, but it hasn't gotten any better.
Was that because the club was under so much uncertainty? Is that why that preseason didn't go well? Do you think, or was that because in a normal environment, Tuchel have had a better season preseason? Sorry.
Well, yeah, that would have been part of it, isn't it? At the end of the day, there was all this sort of up and down stuff going on, and there was a point where we didn't have enough money for hotels and coaches and stuff like that, right? Yeah.
You had the money, you couldn't spend it, right? That's what it was. You couldn't spend it.
Couldn't spend it. Yeah, everything was frozen, and yes, it was a tough time, but that's all done and dusted. Clearly, we've got new ownership. We've got a lot of money and spent a lot of money into the club, and none of it is. It's like none of it is coming off.
It's the best U-turn you could have expected to have someone like Todd Bodie come in and do what he's done. I mean, you must be in dreamland because 6 months ago Chelsea were done. It was almost like, are Chelsea going to get sold and just become that club that almost a bit like the Glazers, they just keep it going and flip it in 10, but he's come in and smashed it on the pitch.
Well, you see, exactly, you're right. It could have gone better in terms of a fan and owners coming in, putting their money where their mouth is, investing in things of that nature. So that respect is really good. But on the flip side, we sort of say, well, I'm hearing a lot of pundits on TV sort of say things like, "Oh, well, he spent too much money and he's bamboozled Potter in a way, right, by putting all these players." So it is a weird situation because they could have easily turned around and said, "Oh, well, they haven't backed him. They haven't bought him any players. They bought him one, maybe two players. That's not enough. He needs to have a proper preseason. He needs to have a proper transfer window where he brings in his own players." I don't think that ever happens at Chelsea, actually. I don't think a manager actually has a transfer window for himself. I think it is a club decision. The club brings in players, and it was the same with the previous owners as well. So it's kind of like,
is that the problem? Is that why Chelsea keep going through managers, because they don't have that Arteta, Klopp involvement in choosing the players they exactly want, regardless of if it's a 33-year-old or whatever the situation is? Because you mentioned something there that the managers are not as involved in recruitment as maybe you would like them to be?
Yeah, correct. They're not. And I don't think that's too different to the way it's always been. And guess what? It's been a success, right? I mean, Chelsea have won everything they could have won, and more, right? So it's working, and the turnover in managers every 2 or 3 years is working. Even when Ancelotti was at Chelsea, he won the double, for goodness sake, and he was gone after that. So there seems to be almost like a turnover. Something goes wrong either in the back room behind the scenes. Sorry, not the back room, behind the scenes, and then the managers are all gone. Same happened with Tuchel, but it's a new regime now. And if Abramovich was still here, Potter wouldn't be in a position right now.
But then if that's what's worked, that model, and Chelsea have proven it to work, which is chop, chop, like you're in, succeed, for whatever reason, on or off the pitch, you're out. The next big thing, come in, Ancelotti, Tuchel,
yeah,
whoever it was. The strange thing is that exactly what they probably need to do, in most Chelsea fans' opinion, is to stick to that model, although it's not ideal because you haven't got the man in place for 3-4 years to build a real philosophy and a playing style. Do you think Chelsea kind of almost have to go back to what they've always done, or are you the kind of fan that thinks, I just want stability and I want that one manager that we can dominate English football for 5 years, like a Klopp, for example?
yeah. Do you know the weird thing is, right? And I know Liverpool fans they absolutely worship Klopp, right? And he's been there for absolutely ages, 7 years now.
Mm, mm.
Same with Pep, he's been there for
Same with
absolutely
Pep, I was
ages,
gonna
and
say, yeah.
and they worship him and stuff like that. In reality, if a player doesn't perform, he gets sold, right? Or he gets moved on, right? And a new one comes in. There is no loyalty in football. And I think as football fans, we're all Potter out today. He wins 2 or 3 games and we think that he's turned it around. He's the man for the job. And that's the reality. And we think that he's going to turn it all around again. So for me, why do we want a manager that for the job? And that's the reality. And we think that he's going to turn it all around again. So for me, why do we want a manager that stays for 7 years? Great if we can make a manager stay for 7, 10, 20 years like Alex Ferguson. Great, let's do that. But I think there's too much emphasis on having one manager that has to make it. Why should that be? And I know that sounds a bit silly in a way, because you do want that stability, and that's what brings stability in a club if the manager is there. But we've seen with a lot of clubs, managers do move quickly, especially in the relegation zone. Now you're going to start to see a lot of managers sort of, a lot of turnover because new manager comes in and they change things and they improve results.
BJ, the risk of chopping and changing managers almost deters some managers to come there now, because the model is not allowing a manager to really get his feet and hands into the club. And, there could be a manager out there, say you got rid of Potter today. Tomorrow you got rid of Potter, right? He's sacked. And you now go into market. You have to give every manager and say, look, you come in, when you go through your down period, I'm going to back you. You can have 6 months to get it right. You can have that bit of leeway because you've done this in Europe. So if someone like Simeone, for example, I know you might not want his football at the bridge, but let's just say he gets you results. Diego Simeone from Atletico Madrid, he might go through a whole bit where it's like it's not working. But at what point are you going to deter a decent manager from joining Chelsea? So this model that Todd Bowley's got, where he's like almost the perfect owner, maybe they're not Potter players, to your point about Chelsea just buying the best world-class players they can get their hands on within that particular window, right? And outdoing their rivals in Arsenal this window. And I get that, right? Because you want to get the best quality in the squad that you can. But at the same time, I look at Chelsea and I think they can't continue to chop and change. They need to find their Pep, and they need to back their Pep, whoever that guy is. And obviously, by the looks of it, it's not Potter. It's not Potter. He's a young, upcoming manager that at Brighton did really well with less expectation, good recruitment, and mid-table was great for Brighton. Even staying in the Premier League was great for Brighton, and he managed to get them up into the top 8 and do some good stuff with them. But let's be honest, was he even the right recruitment for Chelsea Football Club? Was he even the right man? Because Brighton have been fine without him. Isn't Chelsea, for me, Chelsea's always getting proven players, proven managers, and proving it works. And yes, the odd youngster, the odd youngster comes in and maybe goes out on loan. But Chelsea, for me, this is a mismatch because yes, you give a manager time to build stability, like Pep has been given time. Arsenal, I don't want to compare Arsenal and Arteta to Chelsea because it's a different bag because one's ambitious to win it all by backing them with millions, and the other one's got to bring in youngsters and be careful on what they spend. So was Potter even the right decision in hindsight? You look back at now and saying, what were we doing going for flipping Graham Potter? I mean, seriously speaking, like with Chelsea
Yeah.
Football Club, man, was it
Well,
a mistake initially?
well, I think they tried to. What I can see is they tried to stabilize the club and move it away from the 2-3 year manager rotation system that we've had, and go for someone that can build teams, build youth, coach them, and become successful that way. Clearly, it's not working. I'd love Potter to stay and to make it success. I've got nothing against the guy, and I think most Chelsea fans have got nothing against the guy. It's purely his credentials. Um, and going back to my point is, if this was the start of the season, we'd be in the relegation zone right now. At what point do you turn around and say, well, we need to give the guy time to build? Yes, but we don't want to also get relegated at the same time. I know that we're not going to get relegated. But the reality is that we're on 31 points.
Yeah, it's awful, man.
That's not even relegation safe zone yet.
You'll be 11th next week. I think Villa are pretty much
right
there.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I'm saying is that where do you draw the line? You can't say, well, okay, well, here's the job for you, Mr. Graham Potter. Here's a season for you. Go out and do it. Make sure we don't get relegated and everything's great. That's not going to happen at Chelsea. Forget Chelsea. That's not going to happen at any club. No Premier League club is going to say that to their manager at all, are they? And I think that's where you've got a problem is that it's just loss after loss after loss. I mean, where you've got Chelsea up on screen, look, 3 draws and 2 losses.
Yeah, it's a joke, isn't it? I know. The only bit of green at Chelsea Football Club is the bit on the grass at the moment, mate.
There's exactly.
There, it's a shame. I mean, I think Potter was a knee-jerk. I think they got rid of Tuchel because of political issues behind the scenes, from what I've heard. It wasn't necessarily purely a football-based decision. Todd Boehly fell out with him. I think it was over signings or something. Something fell out over him with something. Potter was a quick fix to come in. This British manager doing well at Brighton. Got the whole psychology thing. He studied it. He's a master of, and he's done the whole degree and everything. And he's into all that kind of stuff for football as well. So it sounded great. But let's just strip it back. When Tuchel went out, Potter had no right to walk into that club, if you ask me. Chelsea Football Club, right? The quality they've got, the money they've spent, the squad they've got, where they've been sitting at the top table for so long. Now I look back and think, how did even Graham Potter get that job? Because at Spurs, and I say this being a Tottenham fan, it would have made more sense because of who we are, because we're not Chelsea Football Club. We don't have that squad. We don't spend that kind of money, and we work on the recruitment thing. For me, Chelsea don't need youngsters to come through necessarily. Chelsea have quality. Chelsea have the players to win a league, to be top 4, to win a Champions League. So to bring in this guy who brings youngsters, I'm looking back now. For me, it looks like chalk and cheese, VJ. And it's easy to talk in hindsight because it's obviously a lot easier after you've seen what you can do. But even if you just go back to the moment when they hired him, I almost remember speaking to a couple of mates going, Chelsea have got Graham Potter. Oh, he's going to be there 3 months, 2 months. They'll get their man. He's just a short-term babysitter.
Stopgap, yeah.
He's a stopgap. And then it's been like, we want stability. We want to give him time. But off what? Off pretty much keeping Brighton in the Premier League. And that's not enough for Chelsea, if you ask me, VJ. Chelsea should have a seasoned, winning, historically winning manager that walks in that dressing room and commands respect from the moment they find out he's joining the club. A lot of these players are looking at Potter like me and you are, or a lot of fans, general fans, are looking at Potter going, not being funny, but you're punching, mate. You're seriously punching. Yep. And you can tell me about tactics and organization and how I need to be a better player, but what world-class players have you developed? What have you done that's world-class that you can sit here and take 100% of my attention? I'm basically listening to a coach. They probably look at him as one of those assistant coaches, and at best, he should be Chelsea's assistant coach. How he got that job, I look back and I think, was it a knee-jerk, or was it a planned-out process where they said, right, we want Potter, and then we're going to get rid of Tuchel? Or was it, we need to get rid of Tuchel because we've fallen out with him for whatever reasons? Right, now what's the next best thing? Do you get what I'm saying? I think it was done reactively rather than proactively, where they actually had Potter and then they had a meeting and said, right, we really want this guy. I don't think it was like that, VJ, personally, mate, looking out.
No, I don't. And your table that you got up on screen is telling, because you talk about the greens. Chelsea is the only one in that top 10 that hasn't got a green in the last 5. That's
Crazy.
unheard of for a
Crazy.
top 6 side. Absolutely.
You haven't had
Don't forget
this
this
form
yeah.
since 11 years. It's been since you had this form. I heard on the radio earlier today. 11 years since Chelsea had this
Yeah.
kind of form. And I don't know who that was, but whoever that was lost the dressing room and got sacked pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, it'd be pretty tough to guess, wouldn't it? I mean, that happens every 2-3 years. But you know, the point here is that it's insane. I mean, this is a false position for Chelsea. And I'm not trying to say that, you know, that we're entitled to be further up the table, but with the investment, the club, or what they've done over the last 20 years, they should be up there with the Uniteds and the Spurs and the Cities. They should be up there. They finished 3rd last season. They lost in 2 FA Cup. They lost in 2 domestic cup finals on penalties, for goodness sake. And that could have gone any which way. Penalties are flipping a coin. And you've gone from that to this.
Yeah. Quickly, just on the game from a Tottenham point of view before we close off, lads. I thought Spurs wanted the second balls more than Chelsea. Spurs were hungrier. Spurs won their battles. Spurs were just biting at Chelsea the whole game. We gave you that 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I think the reason Tottenham did that, and we've been a slow first half team all season, it's been driving me mad how we don't come out the traps just, you know, playing good football or going for it. But the reason I think they did that is because they respected Chelsea and they know that the quality on the pitch could damage them, you know, so they waited to see what this Chelsea was going to do on the day in that game. And they realized after 20 minutes, there wasn't a lot to be worried about. I think Sterling had a shot or something. I can't remember what it was, or someone had a shot. And I think off that, they went, right, okay, you know, we've sussed out the situation. And then they started going for it, and then they won the game and deserved winners on the day. When I was doing the highlights reel for Instagram, I couldn't even find any Chelsea highlights, mate. I literally had a Sterling shot and a yellow card and a red card that was overturned into a yellow. So there wasn't much to say about Chelsea on the day. And I worry for Chelsea because I think top 7, top 8 is still possible. Europa League's possible, but then it comes back to the question: do you even want to be in the Europa League? And whether Chelsea take a year out and get it right from scratch rather than still kind of trying to nurse some kind of European presence. Lads, we'll finish off on a